I thought I would just frame it a little bit. I'm going to do a chapter from, not a whole chapter. Careful What You Wish For, which I've got the poster behind me. Can you see it?
Ooh.
Yeah. Came out in August, and it's my 11th novel. And it's a domestic suspense. And that's what I like to write. It's probably my most personal book. It's about a woman who's married to a man who can't pass a yard sale without stopping. Now, I know Sarah can relate to this. Yeah.
I can relate to it.
I am very tempted to take the computer down to my basement and show you who's married to a man who can't pass a yard sale without stopping. But I am actually grateful for the fact that we're on our 4th jigsaw puzzle that he miraculously pulled up from the basement. So what he puts down there, he remembers where it is at least, so he can get it. So Careful What You Wish For. It's about 3 marriages. Hello. And all of them are defined by the stuff that the husband collects or doesn't collect. And so that's why it's so personal to me, because I have this relationship with my husband where he goes to yard sales and I groan. But then eventually this stuff actually ends up being, kind of cool. Except when we have to clear a space, or when the chimney explodes, which it did a couple of years ago, and everything got coated with soot. But that's not in the book. So anyway, it's about 3 marriages. There's the main characters, Emily and her husband Frank. And Emily is a professional organizer, and Frank is a professional yard sailor. Except he's also
marriage made in heaven.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's another marriage with Quinn Newell and her husband, and Quinn is married to a guy he's not a collector as much as a connoisseur. One of those people who's very picky about what he allows into the house, and he doesn't allow into the house anything that she owned before they got married, except her cosmetics and her clothes. So he's controlling the stuff in the house. And then there's a 3rd marriage that's Charlie and Ruth Murphy, and he's a book collector, books and documents. And lo and behold, it turns out he has, after he died, she discovers he had a storage unit, a mysterious storage unit that she has to go investigate. So that's the setup of the book. And people ask me if Marie Kondo inspired the book, and she did not, because I've been writing about my husband's crap for years and years and years, ever since. That's like one of the first books I ever wrote, which I didn't publish, is inspired. But it inspires. I think I got lucky with her, because she hit her stride right around the same time that my book came out. So it was Jamie Lee Curtis reviewed my book, in part because of that connection, of the Marie Kondo connection. And so I was overwhelmed and happy. I'm a kid of Hollywood. My parents were screenwriters. I always feel like Jamie Lee and I probably have some genes in common somewhere, or I like to think so. At any rate, and I'm such a big fan of hers. She wrote that she doesn't like mysteries. She doesn't like things that scare her. I'm like, seriously, Jamie Lee Curtis, you don't like? I mean, Star of Halloween, and but she loved the book. So it was in Time magazine. It was a nice review. So I thought I would read just a little bit from the book, and it's actually the 2nd chapter. The 1st chapter opens with my character creating a video of cleaning her closet. That's her business. Is she helps people get rid of stuff by taking time-lapse pictures of their stuff getting organized. And she's a big star on Instagram, and that's how she gets her clients. So she's filming the reorganizing of her closet while her husband, it's Saturday morning, and what is he doing? You know,
He's sailing.
He's yard sailing. Indeed he is. So in the meanwhile, he's gone, he's come back, he has dragged something into the basement. She doesn't know what it is. She's only able to look out the second floor window and see his bald head going past. And then he leaves again, of course, for more yard sales. Emily stood on the upstairs landing and listened. There was a quiet, almost musical reverberation, but it was the sound of breaking glass that propelled her down the stairs. She doubled back from the foot of the stairs, her turf, the kitchen, with its white walls and glass-fronted cabinets and navy blue formica countertops. The spices that stood on a long, narrow shelf were sorted in alphabetical order. Even the cleaning supplies, invisible under the sink, were in order, sorted in a double-decker wire mesh storage rack that I want to buy, but I've never bought. The room smelled of coffee and dishwasher detergent. Emily continued through the laundry room and hesitated at the door to the basement. Unless a fuse blew, she had no reason to go down there, and many reasons not to. She pulled open the door and gazed down into the murky darkness and listened. Silence and moist, cool air rose to meet her. She flipped on the light switch, waiting for the energy-efficient light bulbs to flicker on and brighten. Clearly, Frank was not using these stairs for speedy access to the basement. The risers were crowded with boxes and bags. Sticking out of one of the boxes was a Mad magazine. What me worry? Board game. Frank had a soft spot for Alfred E. Newman. Emily reached into the bag and eased out an old horror comic, Tales from the Crypt. She slipped it carefully back. Her hand came away smelling of mildew. She cleared a narrow pathway, descended the stairs, and picked her way across the basement toward the opposite wall and the bulkhead door. She passed a rockerless rocking chair, occupied by the skeleton they put out every Halloween, a ping-pong table covered with stacks of picture frames, a pair of life-size ceramic cats that one of Emily's students had given her as a Christmas present, a grinning, garishly colored glass clown that she had won in a raffle, and a pile of 3-ring binders. The picture frames Frank had surely picked up at yard sales, but the binders, clown, and cats, Emily had put all of them out for charity donation pickup. Apparently, Frank had had other ideas. This was why she hated coming down here. So far, nothing to account for the crash she'd heard. She nearly reached the far wall when she spotted what looked like a gold-painted, person-sized harp. On closer inspection, she recognized it as a piano frame. Too small to have come from a grand piano, it was still formidable. Even she could appreciate the gracefully arched frame that was dotted with large and small crater-like holes. Along one edge it said Muskegon, Michigan. Poor thing was a long way from home. It was leaning against a utility table, the floor around it littered with broken glass and china. She tried to shift it, but it was too heavy for her to manage on her own. Frank could deal with it when he got home. Or not. It wasn't her problem. Emily climbed the stairs and returned to the kitchen. Sitting on the counter in the drying rack was a blue plastic salad spinner. Frank must have picked it up for her, knowing she had asked for it. She put the lid on and gave it a whirl. She felt a pang of guilt. If Frank could bag her a salad spinner, the least she could do was sweep up the mess in the basement. It would only take a minute. Emily went back down with a broom, a dustpan, paper bag. Crouching behind the piano frame, she reached across and began to sweep up the pieces. It was a mixture of glass and china, maybe a vase, some wine glasses. She dumped a load into the bag and then crouch-walked further in, sneezed, swept up some more pieces, added them to the bag. She was straining forward, pressing her shoulder against the utility table, trying to reach the last charts when the bulkhead door opened. Light streamed in along with a welcome breeze. Emily glanced up to see Frank silhouetted in the opening. He came down the stairs, his hair a nimbus of light, ducking to clear the threshold. He peered into an oversized brown portfolio. She recognized that covetous look. He'd scored. "Hey, Frank," Emily said. Startled, he looked up from the portfolio and squinted in her direction. "Emily? What did you get?" "What are you doing down here?" he said, closing the portfolio and fastening it shut. Emily recognized the dodge. Maybe he'd overpaid. She stood, or tried to, but lost her balance and staggered back. She dropped the bag and reached out for the utility table to steady herself. That's all it took. The table cracked and buckled. In slow motion, the piano frame that had been resting against it toppled sideways. Emily threw her arms over her head and crouched, cringing at the sound of more breakage, followed by a deafening version of the same discordant reverb she'd heard from upstairs. When the dust settled, Emily looked up. Frank was staring in stunned silence. Finally, he said, "Bloody hell, are you okay?" "I think so." Emily rose to her feet. That's when she realized her flip-flop had come off and her bare foot was wedged firmly between the piano frame and what looked like a four-person church pew that had been lying on its back under the utility table. She tried to wiggle her foot free, but only succeeded in pinning her foot more tightly. "Ouch! Damn it!" She looked across at Frank. He was picking through the broken pieces that she'd swept into the bag. "Frank, can you help me? I'm stuck." Frank's phone pinged. He slid it out of his pocket and looked at the readout, probably an alarm reminding him not to be late for the next yard sale. He smiled. "Frank, please, I can't." Emily tried to inch her foot free, but the piano frame slipped again, slamming down onto the pew and her bare foot. Emily screamed in pain and yanked her foot free. The piano frame thudded onto the concrete floor, toppling a pile of boxes to a thundering cacophony. "Ow, ow, ow!" Emily collapsed in a heap, cradling her injured foot. "Emmy!" Frank dropped the portfolio and rushed over, hooked her under her arms, and pulled her away from the piano frame. "Are you okay?" "No." Emily shook her head. Her foot throbbed. "What were you doing down here anyway?" he said. "I was upstairs. I heard a crash and I came to see what happened." A pause. "And what did happen?" His gaze shifted from the discarded broom to the bag into which she'd swept the broken pieces, then back to Emily. Gently, he examined her foot. Already it had turned ugly black and red across the instep. "It hurts like hell." She winced as she tried to flex her foot. At least it didn't seem as if any bones were broken. Frank helped her to her feet. She set her injured foot on the floor and applied a little pressure. No pain shooting up her leg. "You need to get some ice on that right away," Frank said. He shoved aside the boxes on the steps to make room, then looped his arm around her waist and helped her to the stairs. She leaned against him and climbed one step, then another. "I heard it crash," Emily said. "I came down to be sure everything was okay. When I saw the mess, all I did was—" "I know. Clean, straighten," he said, helping her up another riser. "It's what you do, just like my mother." Emily stopped mid-step. Frank's mother was a perfectly nice woman, but in truth, the only thing she and Emily had in common was Frank. However, at around this point in any argument, Frank dragged the poor woman into the discussion. The minute he'd left for college, his mother had taken it upon herself to straighten his room, his closets, his drawers. She'd thrown away his treasured comic books. She'd tossed his Voltron and He-Man and Star Wars figures along with a pile of Transformers. "Your mother," Emily began. "I know," Frank said with an indulgent smile. "She can't help herself." "You're the one who can't help yourself," Emily shot back. "You dragged that useless monster of a thing down here and propped it up precariously. An accident waiting to happen." She turned and stared down at the piles of stuff that crowded the stairs and filled the basement, at the newly acquired portfolio that was still lying on the floor. Who in their right mind needs this much crap? There's so much, and even you can't get to it. So what's the point? It's a sickness. Frank looked stunned. "So now I'm sick?" He pushed past her into the laundry room, then turned back. "I'm fine. You're the one who's allergic." His voice died. Was he really dragging their fertility test results into an argument about his crap? Emily's eyes brimmed with tears as she managed the last few steps on her own and followed Frank into the kitchen. He opened the freezer, got out an ice cube tray, and slammed it into the sink. Some ice skittered across the floor. He grabbed a dish towel and scooped up a handful of cubes. He offered Emily the makeshift ice pack. She stared at it. "Just so you know," Emily said, "I hate your crap. I hate all of it. I hate that you can't throw anything away or give any of it away. I hate that you can't leave other people's crap in their yard sales, and it makes me crazy knowing how much of it you've dragged into our attic, into our garage, into our basement. It feels like it's growing, breeding." She took a ragged breath. "Even if we're not." That is chapter 2. And I should say the title again, right? I always forget that's part of being an author. Careful what you wish for.
Mm-hmm.
I see that's on the wall behind you too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. The publisher is very kind and will give me one big, for each of my books, I have one. So that's my 11th. And I bring it to readings, which I hope we'll be having again someday. You know, libraries and bookstores.
It'll be nice.
It will be nice. Yeah.
I had a husband like that.
Did you had
That's why
Past
you
tense.
laughed, so.
you had him?
Yes, well, he had a very literary death. He, rather than getting rid of books, he sort of moved them around a lot. And how he actually died is he was carrying a section of Globe Wernicke bookcase up the stairs, and he lost his balance and fell down the stairs and hit his head and died.
How dreadful.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Yes. And his mother gave away his comic books too.
And my father gave away my 1930s radio.
Yes.
I didn't know that anyone in your family ever gave anything away, Sarah.
That was my father. He was
No wonder.
he was an import to the family.
In my family, it was the opposite. My grandmother, you know, she was a Russian immigrant. She was on the boat through Ellis Island, and she didn't want anything old, you know? The whole idea of something that someone else had used, she was finished with that. So everything in her house was Spartan and new, which was disappointing when she died. You know, you kind of wanted to go through and, you know, there's something, yeah, a rubber band ball, that's what I found.
My grandmother kept my mother's paper dolls that she had made.
Oh,
Yeah, and I think they're still around somewhere.
of course they are, Sarah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a keeper. I only keep, my husband's a cartoonist, and he makes me birthday, Christmas, anniversary cards that are that are doodles. And so I have every single one he's ever given me, including the one he gave me before when he was courting, when we were in college. Yeah, I have them all. And I don't save anything. That's the only thing I ever saved.
Those are good things to save.
Yeah. I have them in a big accordion pleated folder by year. We were married in 1969, so we're talking a few years.
I was laughing when she said that she alphabetized spices.
Yeah.
I remember you
do
said,
that?
Catherine, whoever alphabetizes spices, and I had to say, I do.
I do, yeah, I do. I still do. I don't have that many. I just have 2 shelves, but it really makes it easier to find them.
Yeah, I think I was also making fun of my sister-in-law, and it says, who organizes their coupons based on the aisle of the grocery store? And I think you also.
I used to do that.
I was going to say back in the old days when we went to the grocery store.
Back in the old days when we cared about coupons.
I know. Now I'm just happy to get food.
Yeah.
No, I just came from there. I stayed in a very long
Who said
line.
that? Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Which store?
Loblaws in Toronto on DuPont Street. And you stand in a very long line all the way across the parking lot with social distancing, and they let people in batches.
Yeah.
And then there is a sort of a supervisor who selects which cashier you will go to. And so then he directs you there. So,
Well, that feels very calming, actually.
well, at first it really freaked me out that we would be standing outside in the wind and you know, waiting to get in there. But now I'm kind of used to it. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, our local store has a 6:30 opening for seniors. So if I do go to the store, I go to that.
How does that work?
But
Mary?
otherwise, I haunt the delivery service app until I finally score a delivery. It can take days.
Yeah, that's completely swamped here in Toronto. On the other hand, my daughter is big into the restaurant delivery. I noticed when I got up this morning that there was a 3 a.m. order from Uber Eats that had come through on my credit card. It's like, okay, before you order a snack, can you please go to the fridge first and open it just to see if there's anything you want?
So there's a lot of discussion now among writers about whether do we put the lockdown and coronavirus into our books. You know, because I've always tried to avoid. I mean, that's why I say Marie Kondo didn't inspire this. I was writing this book long before she went supernova, but I mean, Sarah, you've written books set historically and used stuff that happened at that time, but it was far enough in the past where you'd have some perspective on it.
I realized that when I wrote a contemporary novel, like Chasing Shakespeare's or The Other Side of Dark, before I know it, it would be a historical novel.
Yeah.
As it was no longer the year 2000. And I think that historical novels, at least for me, are a lot more timeless. I'm writing them set in the 19th century in Brazil, but it has an epidemic.
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah. Well, I remember I was writing, before I wrote domestic suspense novels, I wrote a series of detective novels featuring a psychologist named Dr. Peter Zach. And in one of the books, which was called, it's over there on the shelf, Delusion. It's about a character who is paranoid. And I was writing it during the SARS epidemic. And I turned it, and I talked to my editor. I'm published by HarperCollins. That wouldn't have been, no, then I was published by St. Martin's. So I talked to Kelly Ragland, you know Kelly. And and I said, should I put the SARS epidemic in the book? Because it's set at the present, and the book will come out in a year. And she said, no, because no one will remember the SARS epidemic in a year. It seems now as if they will, because it's so current, but they won't. But I do think that this epidemic is different.
Quite.
This one is life-changing.
It's the difference
for so many
between-
people.
Yeah.
It's the difference between the SARS epidemic, which affected mostly people abroad, and 9/11.
Well, and you know, we saw people put 9/11 in books, and those books didn't do so well. So it's also a question of whether people want to read about it.
Uh-huh.
Mm.
You know,
After
I mean,
having
I
lived
remember.
through it, maybe not.
Yeah.
I wrote a long and short story, which was science fiction day after tomorrow sort of thing. And it had a world pandemic in 2019.
Well, now we know who to blame, Robin.
Maybe it was. Maybe it did start then. Wow, no kidding. Yeah.
Well, it must have, because it's COVID-19. It's because it started in
It
2019.
started in China, November, December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's why it's COVID-19, is because of the year.
I didn't realize that's where they got the 19 from.
You're
Yeah.
right.
I thought there were 18 COVIDs before.
Touche, that was good.
I'm
yeah,
not
I
an
don't
epidemiologist.
Then to read about epidemics. I
I
know that
don't.
I always find books about epidemics and disasters surprisingly comforting.
Andromeda strain. When I think
Yeah.
about epidemic books, that was
Mhm.
the grandmother of them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
And
shocking when it came out.
my favorite was a book about a gigantic asteroid hitting the Earth, Lucifer's Hammer, by Larry Niven and Jerry Pournelle.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, I've read that.
It's old now, but it's still deeply satisfying.
My college roommate was a woman who was a hematologist, who was one of the first physicians to recognize the AIDS virus for what it was. And she died. She had polio. She died in her 40s, as many polio victims do, even though they survive the first. And but anyway, she was in New York City. She was a very well-known doctor for AIDS patients. And one of the things of hers that I got was her copy of The Plague.
The Plague.
Camus' book. Yeah, The Plague. Yeah, and what was so fascinating about it was she had annotated it all over the place, because, you know, that's the book in which the mayor refuses to recognize, just as Reagan did at the time, you know, refuses to recognize what is going on, and they want to shut it down. It was so interesting to read the book with her, you know, pen and ink, what she'd underlined, what she'd written in the margins. But then I gave the book to Radcliffe, has all her papers, so I thought that's really part of her legacy, that and her copy of Heidi. Isn't that sweet? Oh, and it was so read so many times that the cover was, you know, falling off. And I thought, because she got polio when she was, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 8, and just imagining what reading that book must have been like for her.
Oh my,
She was quite a character.
Hmm.
I've often wanted to write about her, but I haven't. I have a lot of notes, but
maybe she'll show up in a book.
She did already, actually. She was in a book that I wrote. Which book was it? Come and Find Me. Is about a woman who's it's about a woman who's afraid to leave her house. She's agoraphobic. She experienced a trauma and lost a loved one, and she's now home on the internet, as we are, working on the internet, living on the internet, not because of a pandemic, but because she can't leave the house. And she teams up with a woman in a wheelchair who helps her solve a crime. And that was definitely based on my friend Linda. That was Linda. I mean, I know what it's like to go into a theater and there not being anywhere for you to roll that wheelchair without going up or down steps. You know, just the whole difficulty that that has been fought for handicap accessibility. So I shoehorned some of that in, without being too preachy, I think. Anyway, I have written about her. I also wrote about her mother. Her mother was a great character.
And careful.
Her mother is one of the characters in this book. Lila, the mother, is based on her mother. Very bossy woman.
So what are you working on next, Hallie?
Little things. I'm not working on anything big, and I haven't been for the better part of a year. And I don't really know. How many of you are writers out there? Yeah. You know, sometimes you don't know if you're between projects or just finished.
It's true. It's true.
So I think I might be between projects. I mean, I have a big fat file folder full of notes. I have the 3 characters I want to write about. I have a story in mind, but it's not enough. I don't have an arc. You know what I mean? I don't have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And with 3 characters, you need 3 beginning, middle, and ends, and they have to resonate together. They can't just be 3 different stories that happen to show up in the same book. Doesn't work like that. So I don't know, Sarah. I don't know. I think I'm still doing research, which is to say the next best thing to solitaire on your computer, right?
Yes. I don't know if you can read this, if it's back to front, but it says the hardest part of doing nothing is knowing when you're through.
That's good.
I'm
like
definitely not through, that I know, but I don't know what I'm not through with.
Uh-huh.
So.
Yeah, I felt for weeks during this like I was doing nothing, but I also felt like I needed to like keep some sort of log of what I was doing. And I discovered when I tried to log it that it was not that I was doing nothing, but that I was doing so much. I was just like, okay, on to the next thing.
Really?
Yeah, so it was like more sort of hypomania rather than not doing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't
I
say
somehow
that.
have less time now than when I could go places. I'm not sure how that happened.
I know. But I do appreciate Facebook more than I ever did. It is so much fun to go in there and the old movie clips and the silly things that people post and also it's such an easy way to connect with people without invading their space.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I really do enjoy it. Are you all Facebook or Instagram or?
More Facebook than Instagram, and I also spend way more time than a sane person would on Twitter.
On Twitter?
Yeah. And,
reading or posting?
More reading than posting, but it's kind of how I take it, so how I filter feed. So I mostly get I have lots and lots of people that I want information from. And
right.
So, I mean, I do post some, but a lot of it's retweeting the stuff that I thought was important. And I thought, yeah, of course, this will give me a record of what I thought was important that I can go back through later. And of course, when you actually try to go back through Twitter, it just doesn't work.
The same problem with Facebook. It's like lost in the ethers. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
I
a
like
big Randy
Facebook.
Rainbow fan now. Anybody watch Randy Rainbow? No.
No.
Now look him up. You're gonna have fun. He's
Is this because of the 7-year-old or?
He's a singer who does parody songs. So
okay.
he's got a very wonderful one that's based on the Grease. Anyway, he takes them and he's left wing. So don't go if you're a Trump fan, but not.
So yeah, we don't have any of those here. Well, how would you compare Randy Rainbow with Weird Al Yankovic?
Randy Rainbow is very, very gay. and a cross-dresser a lot of the time and musical theater, whereas Weird Al Yankovic is more straight parody, right?
Yes.
Outrageousness, yeah.
Depending on the song, because sometimes he'll really glam it up.
Yeah.
But
Anyway, they're
Weird Al is a genius.
Yeah, I love them both.
Mm.
So yeah, but they're not comparable.
Okay, looking up Randy Rainbow.
A spoonful of Clorox.
Hallie, where are you calling from?
Clorox helps it. Yeah, He's very funny.
Where are you located? I missed the beginning because I was coming back from the grocery store.
We didn't say that. So I'm near Boston. I'm actually not too far from Sarah.
Oh, okay.
It's over there in Cambridge, and I'm in a town called Milton, which is just south of.
I've been lost in Milton before.
Yeah. Where is home for you? You're in?
I grew up in Seattle, and I'm a U.S. citizen, and I have a farm in upstate New York in Westport, New York, but I'm a graduate student at the Ontario College of Art and Design right now, and so I am safely in Canada with Canadian health insurance.
Wow.
How about everybody else? Where are you all?
I'm on Cape Cod.
Cape Cod? Where on Cape Cod?
Brewster.
Brewster, right in the middle.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm in Bath, Maine.
Oh, Bath, Maine.
Yeah, which is on the coast.
Yeah.
Ah.
Bath is
And I'm the outlier in Palo Alto, California.
in Palo Alto, California. Wow.
And yesterday she called in from her sailboat.
Wow. I missed that.
Yeah, I just checked in for a couple minutes. We were in a quiet area having lunch underway without anchoring or stopping. And we were about to hit the wind in a couple minutes, so I didn't stay on for long. But we had great wind, up to 25 knots. We were doing almost 9 knots over ground, which is a lot in a boat, in a sailboat. And we were having a lot of fun.
That sounds
But-
great. That sounds
But
great.
you
I
had
was
Wi-Fi?
yesterday I was in a parking lot with my husband. We had to get out of the house. It's like, where do you go? You can't go anywhere. You can't get out of the car, you know? So we went.
I get
sat in the car.
out into the water where there's no one else.
Mm.
Well, that's the way to be.
I was enjoying your ocean vicariously.
Yeah,
Vicarious outdoors.
we drove over to Wollaston Beach thinking that we would be able to put the car somewhere and walk along the sidewalk, but they've got all the parking blocked off. You can't even park.
I hope that changes. We have a wonderful wilderness park in Palo Alto that's not technically connected to the rest of the city, but they made the city limits or gerrymander it in.
Yep.
And it's up in the hills, and only residents of Palo Alto can use it. So we don't have any of the rich riffraff from Atherton and places like that. And it's just beautiful. It's empty land. There's a small area that has picnic tables and stuff, but mostly it's hiking trails through the woods.
And you can go there now?
No, they closed all the parking lots.
Yeah.
And the road getting to it is a very narrow, windy 2-lane road up into the hill. So there's nowhere to safely park and walk in. And I just think it's totally absurd.
Yeah.
Well,
I think most of the stay-at-home rules have become absurd.
Well, yeah. Interesting.
If I
I
can
don't-
safely
I
go
don't
to
know if
the,
you.
if I
I
can
don't know if
safely
you've
go
heard
to the
of
grocery
Sarah Jane.
store, why can't I safely go to a park?
Yeah.
I will show you my park. Let's see this.
Sarah, what were you saying? Oh, that's pretty.
I was asking Sarah if Sarah Jane, mutual friend, if the Hollywood Park has been closed yet. Sarah
As
Jane
far
lives
as
right.
I know, it's still technically closed,
Mhm.
as it's always been, but I
Yeah.
think they still are having problems on our street with people walking up. We have a friend who lives on a street that random tourists think is their best path to get close to the Hollywood sign. And it's a very narrow street where fire and police trucks have a lot of difficulty getting up under the best of circumstances.
Up off Mulholland?
It's below that, but
Oh.
it's in one of the, I know the name of her canyon, but it's in one of the canyons leading up to Griffith Park and the sign.
On the valley
On the-
side or on the
On the LA side.
The LA side.
And they have trouble with people just parking any which way on her street,
Oh, I bet.
walking up smoking cigarettes, which they litter all over. And it's a very high fire risk area.
Fire, yeah.
Et cetera, et cetera. So she's been fighting a battle with the city fathers who have not been very supportive and
Yeah.
actually been outright destructive, trying to get her street gated and closed so they can limit access from there, and trying to get an official access point that's safer built.
Right, right.
Folks,
Well,
I gotta go. I will see you next time.
Yeah.
Hey, take care, Marcia.
Take care,
Thank
Marcia.
you,
too.
thank you for showing up.
Thank you.
Well, that was great fun, and that the description of the stuff was very much
Yeah, that
like
was
my
great.
life. I don't remember
Actually,
any
the-
piano pieces, but
But
The description of
thing
the
that David-
accident made me shiver in
Of the what?
of the accident of everything.
Oh, yeah.
going,
Oh,
oh
yes,
God, I
yes.
was ready to run out of the room when you started
I
reading
thought she
that.
was going to
was
find
very
him
well
trapped
done.
under stuff.
Thank you, thank you.
I have read this book. This is a very good book, and I shivered when she had her hands above her head trying to escape the piano frame, because those things weigh like 400 pounds.
They weigh a ton. And I think I really didn't think about quite how, I don't know that he actually would have been able to drag that into the basement, but
Maybe
Yeah.
he had
not
help.
without help. Yeah. Anyway, nobody
Piano
told you.
frame? What is a piano frame? Is it just the harp of the strings?
It's
Yeah,
a hard
yeah.
Cast iron.
It's a cast
shell
iron.
that the strings are in,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it is
It's
cast
in every
iron.
piano. It goes in the back of an upright or
Yeah.
along the in the plane of a grand piano.
Yeah.
It's
I
You
got-
open it up.
harp.
It's that cast iron thing with the strings on it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it does look like a harp laid on its side.
It
It
does
does.
indeed.
Yeah,
They're
we
beautiful.
We
They're
didn't have one of
beautiful.
those, but we did have a church pew. David had arranged to buy an 8-foot church pew in Marshfield, Massachusetts. And we drove up to pick it up when they said it was ready for us. And we got there and it was a 12-foot church pew.
Oh,
So we had to drive our station wagon with a 12-foot church pew
Oh, my
on the roof
Lord.
and then
Oh, my
figure
Lord.
out where it was going in the house.
did it go somewhere in the house?
It actually ended up on the inside the screened porch, which was a good place for it rather than inside the house. And then it was one of the few.
That thing, yes.
That thing, yes. And then when we sold it, when the house was sold after David died, it was one of the things that the people who bought the house asked if they could keep. So the church pew is still on the back porch, although they took the screens down. The fools.
Well,
Because
we
of course
don't
they're going to
have
get eaten by bugs, you know.
We don't have to worry about them anymore because they're nothing but gnawed bones.
Right. Yeah. No. So yeah. No. The church pew was a familiar object.
And we had ours was not a church pew. My husband did drag in a porch seat, which is the same thing, but a
Mhm.
two-seater, and it had an enormous mushroom, I guess, or a tentacle or something growing out of the seat. That was the bonus.
We just took the seat, our church burned a few years ago, and somehow we acquired a number of pews, which my husband took to pieces, and we just used the seat of one of the pews to make a very nice shelf in our pantry.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Waste not, want not. I like that. Anyway.
We skimmed a couple of things of somebody's house that was about to be sold, and there was a long painful story behind it. But anyway, he asked me and a friend who had a truck to go up and help him move some stuff, and we moved some stuff, and there was a church pew among that. So there's a clear theme of
Oh yeah.
of church pews. Okay. So what's the best thing ever in a yard sale? To finish up with.
I don't know. I'm looking around, you know, at my stuff. What's the best thing ever? I guess our dining room rug. You know, wasn't it a yard sale? My husband also picks garbage.
Mhm.
Of course. Yard
He'll
sale
drag
is
one
what they pay
does.
for.
So I mean, I think he's gotten better stuff at garbage. There was, and they've been in all the books. I've put it in every book. There was once he dragged home a wicker trunk that was, you know, it had a Cyrillic label on it.
Oh,
And
wonderful.
it had a slanted back, and it had obviously been used for shipping in a ship's hold, and it was old. And he drags it up to the house, and then he goes off again, and he comes back 10 minutes later with a bigger one. Same thing, but bigger, like a nested set. And then he goes off, and I'm terrified. It's going to be like
A larger one,
Yes,
yes.
it was.
it's going to be like the 10,000 hats of Bartholomew Cutman. He's going to be coming home with baskets. Fortunately, it was just the two of them. They're still in my garage, but they're also in a book.
You know what the label says?
They're in Never Tell a Lie, right in the beginning.
You know
And
what the label says?
no idea. It was just an address. Yeah,
Oh,
but yeah, but it was
I'd be glad
Cyrillic.
to read it for you if you want to send a picture.
Well, I'm in the peculiar position that, you know, you can't collect these things and you never know when you might need something. And David collected stuff and we had not gotten rid of everything. And here we are in the time when you might need those things that were collected over all that time. And it's all in New York. I am in Toronto. So it's like, oh yeah, we have one of those but it's,
Oh dear. Oh dear. Well, that's
So,
poetic justice.
yeah.
You were complaining about it for all those years, so now
Yeah,
you
the time came when we needed it and I was in the wrong country or the right country or something.
Well, my husband found some breathing masks in the basement, and he found jigsaw puzzles and wine.
Wine is good.
12-year-old bottles of red wine.
Sounds excellent.
It was excellent. Yeah. So I'm still complaining. It doesn't keep me from complaining.
And I have to show mine.
Yes.
So my husband said one day, you can go to a yard sale, but do not come back with anything.
Do not come back with the chicken.
So I came back with a taxidermied hen. And he was speechless.
I bet he was.
Ah,
Well, that is not something I can match. I do not have a taxidermy hen.
But don't tell Jerry or he'll try to find one.
I know. I wouldn't mind an owl.
I'm looking for an owl too. Second owl you find, I bet then.
Okay. Well, thank everyone.
I
Thank
just looked at the
Thank
picture.
you.
Very, very
Thank
nice.
you.
of you
This
to
was a
show
lot of
up.
Thank
fun.
you for coming, Hallie.
Thank you.
thank
Thanks,
you,
Karen.
Hallie. That was
Hallie.
really fun to hear that.